Inside the Monday morning cafe in downtown Portland, the espresso machine howled over scattered conversations. A woman in a red blazer jacket approached the counter, her hands forming precise shapes in the air. The barista glanced up, then frowned. "I don't know what that is," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "If you can't speak, maybe point or something." A few people turned to look. No one moved. Then a man wiping down tables set his rag aside, his hand briefly touching the shoulder of a small girl coloring at a nearby booth before he stepped forward. His fingers moved in fluid gestures. "What would you like?" The woman's face transformed. A small, genuine smile appeared. He nodded once and turned to the barista. "Oat milk latte. No sugar." She slid a business card across the counter as he finished translating. "Lauren Myers. Chief Executive Officer. Apex Dynamics." His hand stopped mid-reach. That company had buried the investigation into the malfunction that killed his wife. The card sat between them like evidence neither could ignore. She noticed the shift in his expression, recognition, then something darker. For a moment, neither moved. Then she picked up her drink, nodded once, and disappeared into the morning crowd. Evan stood there, the logo burning into his vision. Apex Dynamics. The name he'd spent 3 years trying to forget. The name that had taken everything and offered nothing but silence in return. Before we dive deeper, take a moment to subscribe to NUV Stories, like this video and let us know where you are watching this heartwarming story from in the comments. Evan Carter was 34 years old, and every morning he woke to the weight of what should have been. Not possibility. Not hope. The kind of weight that settles after watching your entire future collapse in a single afternoon. 3 years earlier, he'd been a robotics engineer designing machine learning systems for autonomous navigation. His wife Jenna had worked in the same field, relentless in her belief that technology could be built without cutting corners. Together they'd lived in a small house with a backyard garden and a daughter who came into the world without hearing but filled it with endless questions anyway. Before everything shattered, Evan's mornings had looked different. He'd wake to sunlight filtering through cheap curtains in their bedroom, Jenna already awake beside him with her laptop balanced on her knees, fingers flying across the keyboard. She coded the way some people painted, intensely, joyfully, lost in the work. He'd lean over to see what she was building, and she'd swat him away playfully. "Stop backseat engineering," she'd say without looking up. "I'm quality assurance." "You're nosy." They worked for different companies but spoke the same language. Late nights at the kitchen table turned into collaborative problem-solving sessions, whiteboard markers squeaking against the glass door of their back porch as they mapped out algorithms. Jenna specialized in safety protocols, the unglamorous but crucial work of making sure automated systems didn't fail catastrophically. Evan built predictive models that helped machines understand human behavior, anticipate pedestrian movement, avoid collisions before they happened. When Lily was born, the doctors delivered the diagnosis gently but firmly. Congenital hearing loss. Profound. Bilateral. Jenna had cried for an hour, then dried her face and started researching. Within a week, she'd enrolled them both in sign language courses. Within a month, their home was filled with visual schedules, vibrating alarms, and colorful flashcards. Evan watched his wife transform grief into action, and he followed her lead because he didn't know what else to do. Lily grew into a bright, stubborn child who asked questions with her hands faster than most kids could speak them. She wanted to know why the sky changed colors, how airplanes stayed up, where dreams came from. Jenna answered every question with patience Evan didn't know anyone possessed. On weekends, they'd take Lily to the park, and Jenna would narrate the world in sign, bird flying, dog running, wind blowing through trees. Lily would copy the signs, her small hands clumsy but determined. Money was tight. Lily's school wasn't covered by insurance. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, specialized equipment, the costs piled up faster than their salaries could cover. Evan picked up freelance projects on weekends. Jenna took on consulting work in the evenings. They were tired, constantly stretched thin, but they were building something. A life. A family. A future where their daughter would have every tool she needed to move through a world that wasn't designed for her. One Saturday morning in early spring, Jenna handed Evan a small box wrapped in newspaper comics. Inside was a silver necklace with 3 words engraved in clean, simple letters: "Courage listens." "What's this for?" he asked. "For you," she said, fastening it around his neck. "Because you listen to Lily even when it's hard. You listen to me even when I'm being impossible. And because I need you to remember that listening isn't passive. It takes courage to really hear someone." He'd worn it every day since. Then came the demonstration event. Apex Dynamics had announced a community showcase in their neighborhood, a public relations move designed to build goodwill. They were unveiling new surveillance drone technology, compact units designed for search and rescue operations, environmental monitoring, disaster response. The event was held in the parking lot of the community center on a Saturday afternoon in June. Food trucks lined the street, kids ran around with balloons. Local reporters set up cameras. Jenna had volunteered to help with setup that morning. She believed in technology's potential to help people, even when she was critical of how companies cut corners to meet deadlines. Evan had stayed home with Lily, who had a mild cold and didn't want to leave the couch. At 2:15 in the afternoon, Evan's phone buzzed with a news alert. Explosion at community event. Multiple injuries. He tried calling Jenna. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. He grabbed Lily, threw her coat on over her pajamas, and drove faster than he should have. The scene was chaos when he arrived. Ambulances blocked the street. Smoke rose from the center of the parking lot. People stood in clusters, some crying, others staring blankly. Evan left Lily with a neighbor he recognized and pushed through the crowd. The drone had malfunctioned mid-flight. Its thermal regulation system overheated, causing the battery to ignite. The device spiraled out of control and crashed into the ground near the demonstration stage. Witnesses said it happened fast, a high-pitched whine, a sudden drop, then an explosion that sent debris in every direction. Jenna had been standing near 2 children who'd wandered too close to the flight path. Security footage later showed her stepping forward, arms outstretched, pushing both kids backward just as the drone hit the pavement. The blast knocked her off her feet. She landed hard, head striking concrete. Evan found her in the 3rd ambulance he checked. She was unconscious, her face covered in soot and small cuts. A paramedic was checking her pulse. She didn't wake up during the ride to the hospital. She didn't wake up in the emergency room. The doctor used words like traumatic brain injury and catastrophic. She died 17 hours later without ever opening her eyes. The funeral was small. Evan didn't remember most of it. Lily sat beside him in a black dress someone had bought for her, signing the same question over and over: "Where's Mom? Where's Mom?" He didn't know how to answer in a way that made sense to a 4-year-old. He wasn't sure it made sense to him either. 2 weeks after the funeral, Evan hired a lawyer. The lawyer was young, earnest, and optimistic in a way that felt insulting. He assured Evan they had a solid case. Negligence. Faulty design. Inadequate testing. Apex Dynamics had rushed the product to market without proper safety certifications. The evidence was clear. Except it wasn't. Within a month, key pieces of evidence vanished. The drone's black box data became corrupted. Internal emails that whistleblowers had mentioned suddenly didn't exist. Engineers who'd raised concerns during development either recanted their statements or refused to testify. Apex's legal team was a machine, efficient, ruthless, and well-funded. They buried every lead Evan's lawyer tried to follow. The preliminary hearing lasted 40 minutes. The judge reviewed the available evidence, listened to both sides, and dismissed the case. Insufficient proof of negligence. No clear chain of causation. Apex Dynamics issued a public statement expressing sympathy for the victims but maintained that the device had been tampered with by an unknown third party. They offered a settlement, $20,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. Evan refused. His lawyer advised him to take it. "You won't win this," he said gently. "They have resources you don't. They'll drag this out until you're bankrupt." Evan tried appealing. He spent the next 6 months contacting journalists, regulatory agencies, advocacy groups. Most ignored him. A few expressed sympathy but explained they couldn't help without hard evidence. One reporter wrote a small piece that gained no traction. The story died quietly. At work, Evan became a problem. He brought up the case in meetings. He criticized corporate ethics policies. He argued with executives about accountability. His performance reviews went from excellent to concerning. His supervisor called him into the office and suggested he take a leave of absence to process his grief. Evan refused. 2 weeks later, he was let go. The official reason was restructuring. Everyone knew the real reason. The money ran out quickly. Legal fees had already drained most of their savings. Without his income, the mortgage became impossible. He tried finding another job in his field, but word had spread. He was difficult. Unstable. A liability. Smaller companies couldn't risk the association. Larger companies didn't need the drama. He sold the house at a loss. Sold Jenna's car. Sold furniture, electronics, anything with value. He moved Lily into a narrow apartment on the edge of the city, the kind of place where the radiator clanged all night and the carpet smelled faintly of mildew. Lily's new room was barely big enough for her bed and a small dresser. She covered the walls with her drawings anyway, bright splashes of color against beige paint. Evan took a job at Seattle Brews because they were hiring and didn't ask many questions. The owner, an older man named Frank who'd run the place for 30 years, looked at Evan's application and nodded. "Night shift okay?" "Yeah." "Can you start Monday?" "Yeah." That was the entire interview. The work was mindless. Wiping tables. Restocking supplies. Making drinks when the actual baristas were overwhelmed. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and Lily's school tuition. Evan picked up side work fixing bicycles at a shop 2 blocks from the apartment. The owner paid cash under the table and didn't care that Evan had no formal training. He just needed someone who could swap out brake cables and true wheels. Most nights, Evan worked until 2 in the morning, walked home through empty streets, and collapsed into bed. He'd wake 4 hours later to get Lily ready for school. She never complained about the cramped apartment or the fact that her clothes came from thrift stores now. She just drew her pictures and asked her questions and hugged him every morning before the school bus arrived. On his wrist, he still wore the necklace Jenna had given him. Courage listens. Some days it felt like a promise. Other days it felt like an accusation. He hadn't been brave enough to protect her. Hadn't been strong enough to get justice. Hadn't been smart enough to outmaneuver the lawyers who made his wife's death disappear. Every night before his shift, he counted the cash in the kitchen drawer. Rent was due in 11 days. Tuition was due in 2 weeks. He did the math over and over, trying to find a version where the numbers worked. They never did. He'd figure it out somehow. He always did. But the weight of it pressed down constantly, a low hum of panic that never quite went away. On the kitchen counter, beside the drawer where he kept the rent money, sat a framed photo from before. Jenna holding Lily at the park, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. Evan looked at it every morning. Reminded himself why he kept going. Reminded himself what he was surviving for. Then, on an ordinary Monday morning, a woman in a navy jacket walked into his cafe and handed him a business card that brought it all back: the rage, the helplessness, the need for someone, anyone, to acknowledge what had been taken from him. Lauren Myers. Chief Executive Officer. Apex Dynamics. The company that killed his wife had just walked through his door, and he'd smiled at her. Lauren Myers was 9 years old the day sound became optional. She'd been standing outside her father's manufacturing warehouse in New Jersey, watching workers load shipping containers under a gray March sky. Her mother was inside the office handling payroll. Lauren had wandered toward the loading dock because she was bored and curious, the way children are when adults stop paying attention. The pressurized tank ruptured without warning. Later, investigators would explain that a faulty valve had been installed during routine maintenance. The pressure built over hours until the metal couldn't hold. The explosion tore through the west side of the warehouse, sending a shockwave that knocked Lauren off her feet and shattered every window within 100 yards. She woke up in a hospital bed 3 days later. Her father sat in a chair beside her, reading a newspaper. When she tried to speak, her voice sounded muffled, like she was underwater. Roger Myers looked up, folded the paper carefully, and explained in his calm, measured tone that she'd lost significant hearing in both ears. The doctors were optimistic about hearing aids. She'd adapt. Her mother hadn't adapted. She'd been at her desk when the tank exploded, 20 feet from the point of failure. The funeral happened while Lauren was still in the hospital. Roger didn't take her. He said it would be too distressing. Years later, Lauren realized he simply hadn't wanted to deal with a grieving child in public. Roger Myers was a titan in the tech manufacturing world, ruthless, calculating, and entirely focused on building an empire. He didn't know how to comfort his daughter, so he taught her to be strong instead. Strength, in his definition, meant control. Control over emotions. Control over perception. Control over weakness. People will look for cracks, he told her when she came home from the hospital wearing her first pair of hearing aids. Don't give them any. She learned quickly. She sat through audiology appointments without crying when the devices squealed feedback into her damaged ears. She endured classmates' questions with polite, practiced answers. She mastered lip reading not because anyone suggested it, but because missing half a conversation made her feel powerless. Her father hired private tutors to teach her sign language, but only at home, behind closed doors. Sign language is a tool, Roger said. But if you rely on it publicly, people will see limitation, not capability. So Lauren spoke. She articulated carefully, watched faces closely, and pretended the constant low hum of tinnitus didn't make her want to scream. She became fluent in appearing normal, in passing as someone who hadn't lost anything. Her father built Apex Dynamics when she was 12, pivoting from manufacturing hardware to developing autonomous systems. He poured everything into the company, his time, his energy, his capacity for human connection. Lauren grew up in boardrooms and product launches, watching her father command rooms full of engineers and investors. He never raised his voice. He didn't need to. People bent to his will because he made it clear that failure wasn't acceptable. At 14, Lauren asked if she could attend a school for deaf students, somewhere she could use sign language openly. Roger looked at her like she'd suggested dropping out entirely. You want to limit yourself? He asked. You want to be defined by what you can't do? She never asked again. By 16, she'd learned to weaponize her father's lessons. She graduated early. She enrolled in business school and finished at the top of her class. She took a position at Apex, working her way through divisions not because of her last name, but because she refused to let anyone question whether she belonged. She was sharper than most executives twice her age, more disciplined, less prone to sentimentality. When Roger died of a heart attack at 62, he left her the company and a single piece of advice in his will: don't apologize for winning. Lauren became CEO at 28, the board questioned her readiness. She restructured 3 underperforming divisions in her first year, increased revenue by 18%, and made it clear that doubt was expensive. Within 2 years, no one questioned her anymore. But the pressure never eased. Board members circled like sharks whenever quarterly reports dipped. Investors demanded growth that required cutting corners she wasn't always comfortable cutting. Executives smiled to her face and undermined her in private meetings. She learned to sleep 4 hours a night, to answer emails at dawn, to never show uncertainty. Her penthouse apartment sat on the 43rd floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and clean lines and carefully curated emptiness. Expensive furniture no one sat on. Art she'd bought because designers said it fit the space. A kitchen she never used. She'd purchased it because successful people lived in places like this, and she needed to appear successful. Most nights, she came home after 10, poured a glass of wine she didn't finish, and stood at the window looking down at the city. The view was supposed to be impressive. Mostly it just felt distant. She removed her hearing aids before bed, and the silence that followed was absolute. Not peaceful. Not calming. Just empty. The kind of quiet that made her feel like she was disappearing. She never signed at work. Never mentioned her hearing loss unless someone noticed the aids. She'd built her entire professional identity on the idea that she was untouchable, unshakable, entirely in control. Showing vulnerability felt like handing someone a weapon. But lately, the isolation had started to crack her from the inside. Rumors spread through the executive floors that Apex was cutting ethical corners again, safety testing rushed, regulatory compliance treated as optional. Lauren had ordered audits, but the reports came back clean. Too clean. She suspected someone was burying problems before they reached her desk, but she couldn't prove it. The board grew impatient with her questions. One member suggested she was too cautious for the current market. She wanted to fire him. She smiled politely instead. The morning she walked into the cafe wasn't planned. She'd left her apartment early, skipped the company car, and just walked. She needed air. Needed to be somewhere her assistant couldn't find her, where board members couldn't schedule emergency meetings, where she didn't have to perform competence every second. The cafe was crowded and loud, the kind of environment that made her hearing aids pick up too much, dishes clattering, conversations overlapping, the grinder shrieking. She almost left. But she was tired, and she wanted coffee, and she was so exhausted from pretending to be fine that she just wanted one normal thing. When the barista dismissed her, the humiliation was familiar. She'd spent years navigating a world that didn't accommodate her. She knew how to handle it. But then someone stepped forward, and his hands moved in fluid, confident signs, and for the first time in years, someone communicated with her in the language she'd been taught to hide. Relief hit her so hard she nearly cried. She thanked him with a business card because she didn't know what else to do. She wanted to say more, wanted to ask where he'd learned to sign, wanted to tell him how much that small gesture meant. But she saw the shift in his expression when he read her name. Saw recognition, then something colder. She left quickly, unsettled. Back in her car, she sat in the parking lot longer than necessary, staring at nothing. She didn't know why that stranger's reaction bothered her so much. She was used to people disliking her. CEOs weren't supposed to be likable. But something about the way he'd looked at her, like she'd done something unforgivable, stayed with her. She pulled up Apex's incident reports on her phone, searching for anything tied to the time frame she guessed from his age, his exhaustion, the grief that seemed baked into him. She found references to a lawsuit 3 years prior. A demonstration event. A malfunction. She scanned the summary, case dismissed, settlement declined, no further action. Her father had been CEO then. She'd been in a different division. Lauren closed the file and pressed her palms against her eyes. She didn't know what happened. Didn't know if the dismissal was justified or buried. But she knew the look on that man's face, and she knew it wasn't without reason. For the first time in a long time, she felt something close to shame. Lauren returned to the cafe 2 days later, dressed like someone trying not to be noticed. No tailored jacket. No heels. Just dark jeans, a plain sweater, and a coat she'd owned since business school. She'd left her hair down instead of pulled back. She looked younger this way, less polished. More uncertain. She stood outside for 3 full minutes before walking in. The morning rush had passed. Only a handful of customers remained, scattered across tables with laptops and cooling drinks. Evan was wiping down the counter near the register, his back to the door. He didn't turn when the bell chimed. Lauren approached slowly, rehearsing what she'd planned to say. She'd written it out the night before, revised it twice, then deleted the whole thing because it sounded too corporate. Too detached. She needed to sound human. She wasn't sure she remembered how. Evan glanced up as she reached the counter. Recognition flickered across his face, followed immediately by something harder. He set the rag down deliberately and crossed his arms. "We're out of oat milk," he said flatly. "I'm not here for coffee." "Then you're in the wrong place." The hostility was barely concealed. Lauren had expected it, but standing in front of it felt different than imagining it. She forced herself to maintain eye contact. "I wanted to talk to you," she said. "About?" "I don't want to talk to you." A small voice cut through the tension. "Dad, who's that?" Lily appeared from a booth near the window, clutching a coloring book and a fistful of markers. She was maybe 6, dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, curious eyes studying Lauren without judgment. Evan's expression softened instantly. He signed something quick, just someone from work, but Lily was already walking over. "Hi," she signed, then spoke aloud in the careful, slightly flat tone of someone who couldn't hear their own voice. "I'm Lily." Lauren's hands moved before she thought about it. "Hi, Lily." "I'm Lauren." Lily's face lit up. She turned to Evan, signing rapidly. "She knows how to talk." Evan's jaw tightened. "Lily, go finish your drawing." "But she can sign." "I know. Go." Lily hesitated, glancing between them, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. She returned to her booth slowly, looking back twice. Lauren waited until Lily was out of earshot. "She's beautiful." Evan didn't respond. "Look," Lauren said quietly, "I know you don't want to talk to me. I understand why. But I need 5 minutes. Please." "You need?" Evan's voice dropped. "You walked in here with a business card from the company that killed my wife and you think you get to need something from me?" The words hit like a physical blow. Lauren felt her carefully constructed composure crack. "I didn't know," she said. "I swear, I didn't know." "Didn't know what?" "That your company buries evidence. That your lawyers destroy people. Or just that one of those people was serving you coffee." "I wasn't CEO then. I was running a different division." "I didn't." "You inherited the company. You inherited everything it did. You don't get to pretend you're separate from it." Lauren's hands trembled slightly. She clasped them together. "You're right." Evan blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. "You're right," she repeated. "I can't separate myself from what Apex did. But I'm trying to fix it. Or at least," she stopped, searching for words that didn't sound hollow. "I'm trying to do something that matters." She reached into her bag and pulled out a plain manila envelope. She set it on the counter between them like evidence in a trial. "What is that?" Evan asked. "A job offer." He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You're joking." "I'm not. You think I'd work for Apex Dynamics? You think I'd walk into that building after what they did? I think you're skilled, and I think you understand something most of my engineers don't." Lauren's voice steadied. "You understand what it's like when the world refuses to listen." Evan stared at her, anger and confusion warring on his face. Lauren continued. "We're developing a translation system, sign language to synthesized speech. Real-time, accurate, accessible. The kind of technology that could help people like your daughter communicate in spaces that aren't built for them." "Why?" Evan's voice was sharp. Guilty conscience. Maybe. Lauren met his eyes. Or maybe I'm just tired of watching people get dismissed because they communicate differently. Evan picked up the envelope but didn't open it. Even if I believed you, which I don't, I can't afford to quit this job. I have rent. I have tuition. I have. The offer includes salary. 52,000 base, flexible hours, benefits. You'd work on-site 3 days a week. The other 2, you can work remotely. Evan's grip on the envelope tightened. That was more than he'd made as an engineer before he was fired. More than he'd seen in 3 years. Why me? He asked quietly. Because you signed to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because you didn't hesitate. Because most of my engineers see accessibility as a compliance checkbox, and I need someone who sees it as essential. She paused. And because I saw your resume. You built predictive models for human behavior. You understand how people move, how they communicate. That's exactly what this project needs. Evan looked toward Lily, who was watching them while pretending to color. I don't trust you. I know. I don't trust your company. I don't blame you. Then why would I say yes? Lauren hesitated, then answered honestly. Because refusing won't bring your wife back. But building something that helps kids like Lily might mean her death wasn't completely meaningless. It was a low blow, and Lauren knew it. Evan's face went pale. That's manipulative, he said, voice shaking. I know. Lauren didn't look away. But it's also true. Evan turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. His knuckles went white. Lauren waited, barely breathing. Finally, Lily walked back over, tugging on Evan's sleeve. He looked down. She signed slowly, deliberately. What's in the envelope? Nothing important, Evan signed back. You're lying. She tilted her head. What is it? Evan crouched to her level, setting the envelope on the floor beside him. A woman is offering me a job. What kind of job? Building something to help people who sign. Like you. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Maybe. I don't know if I should take it. Why not? Evan struggled for an answer that made sense to a 6-year-old. Because the company she works for hurt people. They hurt us. Lily processed this seriously. Then she signed something that broke him. Maybe this helps someone like me so they don't get hurt. Evan closed his eyes. Jenna used to say Lily was smarter than both of them. He was starting to believe it. He stood slowly, picking up the envelope. Lauren watched him, visibly tense. I need to see the project details first, Evan said. Specifications. Timeline. Team structure. I can send those today. And I want it in writing that if I find anything unethical, anything, I walk. No non-compete, no legal threats. Done. Evan opened the envelope, scanning the offer letter quickly. The salary was real. The benefits were legitimate. It looked clean. Too clean. Why does this feel like a trap? He asked. Because you've been burned before. Lauren's voice was quiet. I can't promise you won't get burned again. But I can promise I'm not trying to trick you. She stopped, something vulnerable crossing her face. I just need help from someone who gives a damn. Evan studied her. She looked exhausted. Not the polished, untouchable executive from the business card. Just someone carrying too much weight. He thought about Lily's tuition bill sitting on his kitchen counter. Thought about the rent that was due in 9 days. Thought about the fact that he'd been surviving, not living, for 3 years. And he thought about Jenna's necklace, still warm against his chest. Courage listens. Listening didn't mean trusting. But maybe it meant trying. I'll look at the project specs, Evan said finally. If they check out, I'll do a trial period. 1 month. If it's garbage, or if I find out you're using this as PR cover for something corrupt, I'm gone. Lauren exhaled, relief visible. That's fair. And I want access to safety records. Real ones, not sanitized reports. Her expression flickered, surprise, maybe concern. That's not standard. Then I'm not interested. They stared at each other. Lauren made a decision. Okay, she said. I'll get you access. Evan didn't know if she was lying. Didn't know if this whole thing would blow up in his face. But Lily was watching him with hope in her eyes, and he hadn't seen her look hopeful in a long time. He pulled a pen from his apron pocket and signed his name at the bottom of the offer letter. Lauren took the signed document carefully, like it might disappear. Thank you. Evan didn't respond. He just turned back to wiping down the counter, jaw tight. Lauren walked toward the door, then stopped. She turned back. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I'm sorry. For what happened to your wife. For what my company did. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. Evan kept his back to her. Just send me the project files. Lauren nodded, even though he couldn't see it, and left. Lily appeared at Evan's side the moment the door closed. Do you trust her? No, Evan signed honestly. Then why did you say yes? Evan looked down at his daughter, this fierce, brilliant little person who deserved a world that actually listened to her. Because you were right, he signed. Maybe it helped someone. Lily hugged him tightly. Evan held her, staring at the door Lauren had just walked through. He had no idea if he'd just made the best decision of his life or the worst. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was moving forward instead of just surviving. And that had to count for something. Apex Dynamics looked like a cathedral built for machines instead of gods. Evan stood in the parking lot on his first day, staring up at the building. 40 stories of glass and steel, reflecting the morning sun in sharp, geometric patterns. The lobby visible through floor-to-ceiling windows was all polished concrete and minimalist furniture. People in expensive clothes moved through the space with purpose, badges clipped to belts, coffee cups in hand. He felt like an imposter before he even walked through the door. Inside, the air smelled like expensive coffee and new electronics. The security desk sat in the center of the lobby, manned by 2 guards who looked like they took their jobs seriously. Evan approached with the visitor credentials Lauren had sent him. Evan Carter, he said. I'm supposed to check in with Innovation Lab D. The guard scanned his ID, typed something, then handed him a temporary badge. 12th floor. Elevators are on the left. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a view of the lobby as it climbed. Evan watched the people below shrink into moving dots. His stomach twisted. He didn't belong here. This was the building where decisions had been made to bury his wife's death. Where lawyers had strategized how to make him disappear. The elevator doors opened on the 12th floor. The hallway stretched in both directions, lined with frosted glass doors labeled with department codes. Lab D was at the end of the hall. Evan walked slowly, aware of how loud his shoes sounded on the polished floor. Inside, the lab was organized chaos. Workstations lined the walls, each cluttered with monitors, prototype hardware, and half-empty coffee cups. Engineers clustered around screens, debating code. A whiteboard near the back was covered in diagrams and equations. Everyone looked up when Evan entered. The room went quiet. Not hostile, exactly. Just assessing. He was new, unknown, and clearly not part of the usual hiring pipeline. A woman near the front, mid-30s, sharp eyes, dark hair tied back, spoke first. You Carter? Yeah. Meera Patel. Lead engineer. She didn't offer a handshake. Lauren said you'd be joining us. Didn't say much else. I'm here to work on the ASL translation project. Myra's expression shifted slightly. You have experience with gesture recognition. Behavioral prediction models. Similar principles. She considered this. We'll see. Another engineer, younger, leaned back in his chair. So Lauren just hired you directly? That's not how it usually works here. Guess I'm not usual, Evan said evenly. The tension stretched for another beat. Then Mira pointed to an empty workstation near the window. That's yours. Login credentials should be in your email. We have a team stand-up in an hour. Evan nodded and crossed to the desk. The other engineers returned to their work, but he felt eyes on him. He sat down, logged in, and pulled up the project files Lauren had sent. The ASL translation system was ambitious, using machine learning to recognize hand shapes, motion patterns, and facial expressions, then converting them into natural-sounding speech in real time. The existing prototype was clunky, prone to errors, and slow. Evan opened the codebase and started reading. By the end of the first day, he'd identified 3 bottlenecks in the recognition algorithm. By the end of the week, he'd rewritten 2 of them. Mira noticed. You're faster than I expected. I'm motivated, Evan said without looking up. She almost smiled. Lily started visiting the lab after school on Wednesdays. Evan had tried to arrange childcare, but the costs were absurd, and Lauren had waved him off when he mentioned it. Bring her, she'd said simply. The lab isn't a daycare, but it's not a sterile environment either. She'll be fine. The first time Lily walked in, carrying her backpack and a juice box, the engineers stared. She ignored them completely, found a spot on the floor near Evan's desk, and started drawing. Within an hour, she'd charmed half the room. An engineer named Marcus showed her a robotic arm prototype. She asked rapid-fire questions in sign, and Marcus, who didn't know ASL, looked to Evan for translation. Soon, other engineers were stopping by to see what she was working on. She drew blueprints of imaginary machines, labeled them with misspelled technical terms, and explained their functions with absolute confidence. This one makes clouds, she signed, holding up a crayon drawing of something that looked vaguely like a blender. What kind of clouds? Marcus asked through Evan. Happy ones. Marcus laughed. We should build that. Lily became a fixture. Engineers started keeping candy in their desks for her. Someone set up a small table in the corner with paper and markers. She asked questions that made them rethink assumptions, not because she was brilliant, but because she didn't know what was supposed to be impossible. Evan watched her thrive in the space and felt something loosen in his chest. She was happy here. Curious. Engaged. It reminded him of the version of his life that existed before everything collapsed. Lauren visited the lab more frequently than she needed to. She told herself it was to monitor progress. In reality, she just wanted to see how Evan was adjusting. She'd watch him work from the doorway, focused, competent, occasionally frustrated but never defeated. He belonged here in a way she hadn't expected. One afternoon, she found him stuck on a problem with motion tracking. He was muttering to himself, reviewing footage of someone signing, trying to isolate why the algorithm kept misinterpreting a specific gesture. Lauren walked over. What's wrong? Evan glanced up. The system keeps reading this sign as 2 separate words. It's treating the motion as discrete instead of fluid. Show me. He played the clip. Lauren watched, then signed the phrase herself slowly. Evan's eyes tracked her hands. It's the transition, she said, signing as she spoke. The algorithm is looking for stops between words, but in natural signing, there aren't hard stops. It flows. Evan stared at her. That's exactly the problem. They spent the next hour reworking the motion detection parameters. Lauren signed dozens of phrases while Evan adjusted variables. They fell into an easy rhythm, her demonstrating, him analyzing, both of them problem-solving in a way that felt almost collaborative. At one point, Lily wandered over and joined in, signing random phrases just to see what the system would output. When it translated, "purple elephant dancing," perfectly, she burst into giggles. Lauren smiled. A real smile, not the corporate version she wore in meetings. Evan noticed. "You should do that more." "What?" "Smile. You look human when you do." Lauren's cheeks flushed slightly. "I'm always human. Could have fooled me. It wasn't mean. Just honest." Lauren found she didn't mind. Over the following weeks, something shifted. Evan stopped seeing Lauren as just the CEO of the company that destroyed him. She was still that, but she was also someone who stayed late debugging code, who brought Lily books about inventors, who signed with him during breaks because it felt easier than talking. Lauren stopped performing around him. She removed her hearing aids once during a long evening session, frustrated by the lab's fluorescent hum. Evan noticed but didn't comment. Just adjusted how he communicated, signing more, speaking less. She felt safer in the quiet they created together. They didn't talk about Jenna. Didn't talk about the past. But it sat between them like a third presence, unresolved but no longer suffocating. One late night, Evan got the translation system to process a full conversation in real time without errors. He leaned back in his chair, exhausted and exhilarated. Lauren was still there, reviewing reports at a nearby desk. Did it work? Yeah. He couldn't keep the grin off his face. It actually worked. She walked over, watched the playback, and something in her expression softened. This is going to help a lot of people. Maybe, Evan said, if it doesn't get buried in corporate bureaucracy. Lauren met his eyes. I won't let that happen. He wanted to believe her. And for the first time, he almost did. Lily appeared beside them, rubbing her eyes. She'd fallen asleep on the couch in the corner. Are we going home? Evan checked the time. Nearly midnight. Yeah, kiddo. We're done. As they gathered their things, Lauren walked them to the elevator. Lily hugged her goodnight without hesitation. Lauren looked startled, then hugged her back carefully. See you Wednesday, Lily signed. Lauren nodded. See you Wednesday. The elevator doors closed. Evan and Lily descended in comfortable silence. On the 12th floor, Lauren stood alone, staring at the empty hallway. For the first time in years, the building didn't feel so cold. Oliver Grant had the kind of face people trusted instinctively, clean-shaven, warm smile, the practiced charm of someone who'd learned early that likability was currency. He wore tailored suits that cost more than Evan's monthly rent and spoke in measured tones that made even bad news sound reasonable. Evan met him on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into his time at Apex. He was reviewing code at his workstation when a presence loomed over his shoulder. Evan glanced up to find a man in a charcoal suit studying his screen with vague interest. Evan Carter, the man said, not quite a question. That's me. Oliver Grant. Chief Operating Officer. He extended a hand. Evan shook it briefly. Oliver's grip was firm, deliberate. Lauren mentioned she brought in outside help for the translation project. She did. Interesting choice. Oliver's smile didn't reach his eyes. We usually promote from within. Keeps things cohesive. Evan turned back to his monitor. Guess she wanted a different perspective. Or she's making emotional decisions. Oliver's tone was light, almost conversational. Lauren has a tendency to let personal feelings interfere with business. It's admirable in some ways. Problematic in others. Evan's jaw tightened. The project's on schedule. That's what matters. For now. Oliver straightened, adjusting his cuff links. But corporate goodwill only stretches so far, especially for people with complicated histories. The words landed like a threat wrapped in politeness. Evan looked up sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Just that lawsuits leave paper trails. Even dismissed ones. Oliver's smile was razor-thin. Don't worry. Your past is your business. As long as it doesn't become the company's problem. He walked away before Evan could respond. Mira appeared at Evan's side a moment later. Ignore him. Oliver's a snake, but he's mostly harmless if you don't give him leverage. What's his deal? He likes control. Doesn't like when Lauren makes decisions without consulting him first. Mira lowered her voice. Rumor is he wanted the CEO position when her father died. Didn't get it. He's been undermining her ever since. Evan filed that information away and tried to focus on work. But Oliver's words echoed. Complicated histories. The man knew exactly who Evan was and why he was here. The confrontation came 2 days later. Evan was walking Lily through the lobby after school when Oliver intercepted them near the elevators. He crouched to Lily's level with a practiced smile. And who's this? Lily looked to Evan uncertainly. He signed, this is someone from work. You don't have to talk to him. Oliver's expression flickered, annoyance, quickly masked. He stood. Your daughter? Yeah. Cute kid. Oliver's tone was pleasant, but his eyes were calculating. Must be hard, raising her alone. Expensive too, I imagine. Special schools, therapies, all that. Evan's hands curled into fists. We manage. I'm sure you do. Just seems like a lot of pressure for someone in your position. Oliver tilted his head. Consulting work isn't exactly stable. One bad quarter, one budget cut, and suddenly you're back to, what was it? Night shifts at a cafe? Lily tugged Evan's sleeve, sensing the tension. He forced himself to stay calm. We're fine, Evan said evenly. Of course. Oliver's smile sharpened. Just be careful, Carter. Tragic backstories don't make you valuable. Results do. And if Lauren's little charity project doesn't deliver, well, he shrugged. The board has opinions about wasted resources. He walked away, leaving Evan standing rigid with anger. Lily signed, I don't like him. Me neither, Evan signed back. That night, Evan couldn't sleep. Oliver's words circled his mind, each one a carefully placed barb designed to remind him how precarious his position was. He thought about the lawsuit, the evidence that had vanished, the company that had buried his wife's death like it was a minor inconvenience. He thought about Oliver's face, too smooth, too confident. At 2 a.m, Evan got out of bed. He opened his laptop and logged into Apex's network using the credentials Lauren had given him. She'd promised access to safety records. He decided to see how far that access actually went. The main database was organized and sanitized, reports formatted perfectly, incidents logged with clinical detachment. Nothing suspicious. But Evan had worked in tech long enough to know that real information rarely lived in the official files. He navigated to the archived server nodes, old storage systems that hadn't been fully migrated to the new infrastructure. It took him 40 minutes to find the folder, buried under layers of outdated file structures and cryptic naming conventions. Incident Report, June 2022, Drone Malfunction. His hands shook as he opened the file. Inside were video fragments, system warnings, internal emails. Logs showing the thermal regulation system had failed during 3 separate test flights. Engineers had flagged the issue. Recommended delaying the public demonstration. One email stood out. Sent from an engineer named Carla Mendez to Oliver Grant, 2 days before the event. We cannot proceed with the demo. The TR-9 system is unstable. If we push forward without addressing this, we're risking catastrophic failure. Oliver's response was brief. Noted. Proceed as scheduled. We'll address post-launch. Evan's vision blurred. He scrolled further. Found a second email chain, this one between Oliver and Apex's legal team, dated 3 days after Jenna's death. Suppress all internal communications TR 9 warnings. Corruption of flight data logs confirmed. Witnesses briefed on NDA consequences. Estimated settlement costs under $50,000 per victim if we move quickly. The room felt too small. Evan's chest tightened, breath coming in shallow gasps. He closed the laptop and pressed his palms against his eyes. They'd known. They'd known the drone was dangerous, and they'd proceeded anyway. And when it killed people, when it killed Jenna, they'd buried the evidence like it was routine. Oliver had signed off on all of it. Evan grabbed his phone, then stopped. Who could he call? Lauren? She'd given him access, but confronting her with this felt like crossing a line he couldn't uncross. A lawyer? He'd been down that road before, and it had led nowhere. He opened the files again, this time copying everything to an external drive. If he was going to do something with this, he needed to be sure it couldn't disappear again. A memory surfaced, Jenna at their kitchen table, reviewing safety protocols for a project she'd been working on. She'd been frustrated, exhausted. Companies always want to move fast, she'd said. But fast and safe aren't the same thing. Somebody has to slow them down, even when it's inconvenient. Evan had kissed her forehead. That's why you're good at what you do. She'd smiled. Somebody has to care. He stared at the external drive, now loaded with evidence that could destroy Oliver. That could vindicate Jenna's death. That could burn Apex Dynamics to the ground. But it could also destroy Lauren, who'd given him access in good faith. Who'd offered him a second chance. Who signed with Lily every Wednesday like it was the most natural thing in the world. Evan didn't know what to do. So he hid the drive in the bottom of his desk drawer, beneath old bills and broken pens, and tried to pretend he hadn't just unearthed a bomb. The next morning, Oliver appeared in the lab during stand-up. He smiled at the team, offered generic praise about their progress, then turned to Evan. Carter, can I borrow you for a moment? Evan followed him into an empty conference room. Oliver closed the door. You've been digging around in old files, Oliver said pleasantly. Evan's blood went cold. I was reviewing safety documentation. Lauren gave me access. Lauren gives a lot of people access to things they shouldn't see. Oliver leaned against the table, arms crossed. Here's the thing, Carter. You're smart. I respect that. But you're also angry, which makes you reckless. And reckless people make mistakes. I haven't done anything wrong. Not yet. Oliver's smile vanished. But if you step out of line, if you cause problems for this company, I will bury you again. And this time, you won't have the energy to crawl back out. Evan met his gaze. You threatening me? I'm protecting this company. There's a difference. Oliver left without waiting for a response. Evan stood alone in the conference room, rage burning so hot he could barely think. Oliver had destroyed Jenna. Had threatened him. Had made it clear that truth didn't matter, only power. And Evan had the evidence to take him down. He just had to decide if he was willing to risk everything to use it. Evan waited until late evening, after most of the lab had cleared out. Lauren was still in her office on the executive floor, visible through the glass walls, reviewing documents under harsh fluorescent light. He'd been rehearsing what to say for hours. None of it sounded right. He knocked. She looked up, surprised, then gestured him inside. Something wrong with the project, she asked. No. The project's fine. Evan closed the door behind him. I need to show you something. He set the external drive on her desk. Lauren stared at it like it might explode. What is this? Evidence. From the archived servers. Evan's voice was tight. About the drone malfunction. The one that killed Jenna. Lauren's expression shifted, confusion, then dawning dread. Evan. Just look at it. She plugged the drive into her laptop. Evan watched her face as she read through the emails, the suppressed warnings, the internal communications. Her hands moved to her mouth. Her breathing quickened. Oliver signed off on the demonstration knowing the system was unstable, Evan said quietly. And after the accident, he coordinated the cover-up. All of it. Every piece of evidence that disappeared, he made it happen. Lauren scrolled through the files, her face draining of color. Then she stopped. Opened an email dated 2 weeks before the demonstration. It was addressed to her father. Roger, flagged thermal concerns on TR-9. Engineering wants to delay. Recommend we proceed anyway. Market timing is critical. We can manage blowback. Her father's response was a single line. Your call. Make it clean. Lauren's hand started shaking. He knew. My father knew. Lauren. He knew the system was dangerous and he let it happen anyway. Her voice cracked. He signed off on it. He's just as responsible as Oliver. Evan didn't know what to say. He'd expected anger at Oliver, maybe shock. He hadn't anticipated this, the realization that her father, the man who built this company, had valued profit over human life. Lauren stood abruptly, pacing. We have to expose this. All of it. Oliver, the cover-up, everything. Are you sure? This will destroy the company. I don't care. Her voice was fierce. People died because they cut corners. Your wife died. If Apex can't survive the truth, then it doesn't deserve to exist. Over the next 3 days, they worked in secret. Lauren pulled additional records, cross-referencing Oliver's communications with legal filings and financial reports. Evan compiled the technical data, building a timeline that showed exactly when the warnings were ignored and why. They contacted a federal investigator Lauren knew from a previous regulatory audit. Scheduled a meeting. Started drafting a formal complaint. Lauren barely slept. Evan found her in the office at midnight, eyes red, surrounded by printed emails. You should go home, he said gently. I can't. She looked up at him. I ran this company for 3 years thinking I was fixing what my father broke. But I was just, continuing it. Protecting it. I'm complicit in all of this. You didn't know. I should have. Her voice was raw. I should have dug deeper. Asked harder questions. I was so focused on proving I deserved this position that I never stopped to ask if the position itself was built on something rotten. Evan sat across from her. We're fixing it now. She nodded, but the weight didn't leave her face. Oliver found out on a Thursday morning. Lauren arrived at the office to find an emergency board meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. No agenda listed. No explanation. Just a terse message from the board chair requesting her immediate attendance. She walked into the executive conference room to find 8 board members seated around the table. Oliver sat at the far end, expression neutral. The board chair, an older man named Gerald Hutchins, didn't waste time. Lauren, we've received troubling reports about unauthorized access to confidential files. Specifically, archived incident reports related to a 2022 product demonstration. Lauren's stomach dropped. I authorized that access. Without board approval, Oliver interjected smoothly. And you've been sharing privileged company information with a consultant who has a documented history of hostility toward Apex. Evan Carter is working on a legitimate project. Evan Carter filed a lawsuit against this company, Oliver said. He's publicly accused us of negligence. And you gave him access to sensitive internal communications. That's a breach of fiduciary duty. Gerald leaned forward. Lauren, we need to understand your decision-making here. Why would you grant this level of access to someone with clear bias against the company? Because the information he found is evidence of criminal negligence. Lauren's voice was steady, but her hands gripped the table edge. Oliver knowingly approved a product demonstration despite engineering warnings. When the malfunction killed 3 people, he orchestrated a cover-up. It's all documented. The room went silent. Oliver's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Based on what? Files pulled out of context by someone with a vendetta. Oliver looked at the board. Lauren's judgment has been compromised. She's allowed personal feelings, sympathy for a grieving widower, to cloud her professional responsibilities. This isn't about sympathy, Lauren snapped. This is about accountability. Gerald held up a hand. We'll investigate these claims thoroughly. But in the meantime, given the sensitive nature of this situation and the potential legal ramifications, the board feels it's prudent to place you on temporary administrative leave. Lauren stared at him. You're suspending me? Pending investigation, Gerald clarified. Oliver will assume interim CEO responsibilities. The betrayal hit like cold water. She looked around the table. No one met her eyes. You're protecting him, she said quietly. You know what he did, and you're protecting him because it's easier than dealing with the fallout. We're protecting the company, Gerald said. Please surrender your access credentials and leave the premises. Security escorted Lauren out 30 minutes later. She walked through the lobby in a daze, employees staring as she passed. Her badge was deactivated. Her office was being locked down. Everything she'd built, gone in a single meeting. She sat in her car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to move. Then she drove home to her empty penthouse and stood at the window overlooking the city. The view that once felt powerful now felt isolating. She'd lost the company. Lost her father's legacy. Lost the only identity she'd ever known. She removed her hearing aids and let the silence consume her. Evan found out an hour later when security appeared at his workstation. Mr. Carter, you need to come with us. The lab went silent. Mira stood. What's going on? His employment has been terminated. He needs to collect his belongings and leave immediately. Evan's heart hammered. On what grounds? Breach of contract. Unauthorized access to confidential materials. Lily was in the corner, drawing. She looked up, confused. Evan forced himself to stay calm. Can I have 10 minutes to pack? 5. Evan moved mechanically, gathering his notebook, his laptop, a few personal items. Lily appeared at his side, tugging his sleeve. What's happening? She signed. We have to go, he signed back. Why? I'll explain later. Her face crumpled. She'd been happy here. Safe. And now it was ending, just like everything else. Mira walked over as security hovered nearby. This is garbage, Evan. I know. Whatever you found, it was real, wasn't it? He nodded. Then don't let them bury it. Security escorted him and Lily through the building. People stared. Whispered. Evan kept his head down, one hand on Lily's shoulder. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright. Lily cried silently as they walked to the car. Evan buckled her in, hands shaking with rage and helplessness. He'd been here before. Fired. Humiliated, watching everything collapse because he tried to tell the truth. He drove home in silence, Lily clutching her drawings. Inside their cramped apartment, he sat on the couch and stared at nothing. Lily climbed into his lap. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart. We're okay. But they weren't. Rent was due in 6 days. He had no job. No prospects. And the company that destroyed his life had just done it again. His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. I'm so sorry. I'll fix this. Evan didn't respond. He didn't believe her. didn't believe anyone anymore. He pulled Lily closer and tried not to think about how many times a person could fall before they stopped getting back up. 3 days after losing everything, Evan started packing. The eviction notice had arrived that morning, taped to the door like a formal declaration of failure. 30 days to vacate. He had savings that would last maybe 2 weeks if he was careful. After that, he didn't know. Cardboard boxes lined the narrow living room. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, carefully wrapping her drawings in newspaper. She worked in silence, which was somehow worse than if she'd been crying. She understood what was happening, even if she didn't say it. Evan moved through the apartment mechanically, sorting things into 3 piles: keep, sell, trash. Most of it ended up in the trash pile. 3 years of rebuilding, and he still didn't own much worth keeping. That he pulled open the closet in the bedroom, dragging out old winter coats and boxes he hadn't touched since they moved in. One box was labeled Jenna, personal, in his own handwriting from years ago. He'd shoved it to the back of the closet after the funeral and never opened it again. His hands hovered over the lid. He should have gone through this a long time ago. Should have dealt with it properly instead of just avoiding that. He carried the box to the living room. Lily looked up as he set it down. "What's that?" she signed. "Mom's things." Lily moved closer, suddenly interested. She'd been so young when Jenna died. Her memories were fragmentary, impressions of warmth and laughter, but no clear details. Evan opened the box. Inside were notebooks filled with Jenna's precise handwriting, USB drives labeled with project names, a worn hoodie that still smelled faintly like her shampoo. Lily pulled out a photo, Jenna holding her as a baby, both of them laughing at something off camera. "She's pretty," Lily signed. Yeah. She was. Lily dug deeper into the box, curious. She pulled out a small USB drive that had fallen to the bottom, covered in dust. Unlike the others, this one wasn't labeled. "What's this?" she signed. Evan took it, turning it over in his hands. "I don't know. Can we see?" He almost said no. Almost put it back in the box and closed the lid. But something stopped him, maybe curiosity, maybe the fact that he had nothing left to lose. He plugged the drive into his laptop. A single video file appeared, dated 3 days before the accident. He clicked it. The screen filled with Jenna's face. She looked exhausted, sitting in what Evan recognized as her office at her old job. The lighting was harsh, unflattering. She wore the expression she always had when she was working through a problem she couldn't solve. "Evan," she said into the camera, "if you're watching this, something went wrong." His breath caught. Lily climbed onto the couch beside him, watching intently. Jenna continued. "I've been reviewing the specifications for the Apex Dynamics TR-9 surveillance drone. They're planning a public demonstration this Saturday, but the thermal regulation system is flawed. I've run the simulations a dozen times. Under stress conditions, the battery core overheats. It's not a question of if it fails, it's when." She pulled up a screen, showing technical diagrams and data charts. "I flagged this in 3 separate reports to the engineering lead. Got brushed off every time. They're prioritizing the launch timeline over safety protocols." Jenna rubbed her eyes. She looked scared. "I went to the COO, Oliver Grant. Showed him the simulations. He told me the data was inconclusive and that delaying would cost the company millions in investor confidence. He said if I kept pushing, I'd be reassigned." Evan's hands clenched into fists. "So I'm documenting everything," Jenna said. "All the warnings I sent. All the test failures. I'm saving it here because if this thing malfunctions and people get hurt, someone needs to be held accountable." She paused, her expression softening. "I don't know if I'm being paranoid. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the system will work fine and I'll look back on this and laugh." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "But if I'm right?" "Evan, Please make sure people know. Don't let them bury this. The video cut to raw footage, test runs of the drone in controlled environments. On the third test, the device began smoking mid-flight. Alarms blared. The drone spiraled and crashed, erupting in flames. Jenna's voice narrated over the footage. This was recorded 2 weeks before the scheduled demonstration. The engineering team recommended scrapping the design. Oliver overruled them. The video ended. Evan stared at the blank screen, his entire body shaking. Lily touched his arm gently, but he barely felt it. Jenna had known. She tried to stop it. And they'd silenced her. Then, when the drone killed her, they'd erased every piece of evidence she tried to preserve. Except this. Evan's vision blurred. He pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to hold himself together. A sound escaped his throat, half sob, half scream. 3 years of grief and rage broke open all at once. Lily wrapped her arms around him. He held her, shaking, unable to speak. She pulled back and signed, "Mom tried to help people." Evan nodded, wiping his face. "Yeah. She did. We should help too." The simplicity of it cut through everything. Jenna had fought to expose the truth. She'd lost. But the evidence still existed. And Evan had a choice: bury it again, or finish what she started. He picked up his phone. Hesitated. Then dialed Lauren. She answered on the second ring. "Evan. I have something you need to see." Lauren arrived at his apartment 40 minutes later, still dressed in sweatpants and a jacket, her hair unbrushed. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Evan didn't waste time. He played the video. Lauren watched in silence, her face growing paler with each passing second. When it ended, she sat motionless. "She documented everything," Evan said quietly. Oliver knew. He ignored the warnings. And when it killed her, he made sure no one would ever find out. Lauren's hands trembled. "This changes everything." "Does it?" "We already had evidence. They buried us anyway. This is different." Lauren looked at him, something fierce in her eyes. "This is testimony from someone who died trying to stop it. This is proof they knew people would get hurt and they did it anyway. We can't let them bury this. They'll try. Let them." Lauren stood, pacing the small living room. "We take this to the federal investigators. We go public. We make so much noise they can't silence us." Evan wanted to believe her. But he'd been crushed too many times. "What if it's not enough?" he asked. "Then we make it enough." Lauren turned to face him. "The shareholders' meeting is in 2 weeks. Public event. Press everywhere. We bring this evidence. We expose Oliver in front of everyone who matters. They can't bury us if the whole world is watching." Evan's mind raced. It was risky. Reckless. The kind of move that could backfire catastrophically. But Jenna's voice echoed in his head. "Please make sure people know." He looked at Lily, who was watching them both with wide, hopeful eyes. "Okay," Evan said. "We do it. We expose everything." Over the next 10 days, they worked in secret. Lauren contacted the federal investigator she'd reached out to before, this time with Jenna's video as the centerpiece. The investigator reviewed the evidence and agreed to attend the shareholders' meeting, ready to act if criminal wrongdoing was confirmed publicly. Evan compiled every piece of documentation, the emails, the test footage, the suppressed warnings. He built a timeline so airtight that even Apex's lawyers couldn't dismantle it. Lauren prepared her statement, rehearsing it until the words felt like weapons. She contacted journalists she trusted, gave them enough information to pay attention without tipping off Oliver's team. They met in coffee shops, in parks, anywhere that wasn't monitored by Apex. Lauren removed her hearing aids during their planning sessions, and they communicated entirely in sign language. It felt safer that way. More honest. One evening, as they reviewed the final presentation, Lauren paused. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Me too. What if this destroys everything? The company, my reputation, all of it." Evan met her eyes. "Then at least it'll be the truth." She nodded slowly. Jenna deserved better than what they did to her. Yeah. She did. Lily appeared between them, holding a drawing. She'd sketched the three of them standing together in front of a building, Evan, Lauren, and herself, holding hands. "We're brave," she signed. Lauren smiled, her eyes wet. "Yeah, kiddo. We are." The night before the shareholders' meeting, Evan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible outcome. Best case, they exposed Oliver and forced accountability. Worst case, they were discredited, sued, destroyed. His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. "Tomorrow, we finish this. For Jenna." Evan typed back. "For Jenna." He touched the necklace at his throat. Courage listens. Tomorrow, the world would listen whether it wanted to or not. The Apex Dynamics annual shareholders meeting was designed to intimidate. The venue was a converted exhibition hall downtown, all soaring ceilings and industrial steel beams. Screens the size of billboards flanked the main stage, displaying the company logo in crisp, corporate blue. Rows of seats stretched back into dim lighting, filled with investors in expensive suits, board members with carefully neutral expressions, and journalists stationed along the aisles with cameras ready. Oliver Grant stood at the center of the stage, confident and composed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He smiled warmly at the crowd, the picture of executive competence. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice amplified through the hall's sound system. "This has been a transformative year for Apex Dynamics. Under my interim leadership, we've seen record growth, expanded our product lines, and reinforced our commitment to innovation." Applause rippled through the audience. Oliver's smile widened. "We've faced challenges, certainly. But challenges create opportunities for those willing to adapt. Apex has always been a company that looks forward, not backward. That refuses to be paralyzed by." The rear doors opened. Every head in the hall turned. Lauren Myers walked through, flanked by Evan Carter on one side and a small girl holding his hand on the other. Lauren was dressed simply, dark pants, white blouse, no jewelry except small earrings. Her hair was pulled back, her expression calm but unyielding. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. Oliver's smile froze. "Lauren. This is unexpected." Lauren walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Evan and Lily followed, Lily's eyes wide but trusting. Journalists whispered frantically into phones. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Security moved to intercept, but Gerald Hutchins, the board chair, held up a hand. "Let her speak." Lauren reached the stage. Oliver stepped back, his composure cracking slightly. She turned to face the crowd. Hundreds of eyes watched her. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, the weight of every decision that had led to this moment pressing down on her. Then she reached up and removed her hearing aids. The gesture was deliberate, symbolic. She set them on the podium and looked out at the audience, some confused, others curious, a few beginning to understand. Lauren's hands began to move. Behind her, the massive screens flickered to life. The ASL translation system she and Evan had built together activated, capturing her signs and converting them into a clear, synthesized voice that filled the hall. "My name is Lauren Myers. I was CEO of this company until I was suspended for trying to tell the truth." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Oliver stepped forward. "Lauren, this isn't the time." She ignored him, continuing to sign. 3 years ago, Apex Dynamics held a public demonstration for a surveillance drone. The device malfunctioned. 3 people died. One of them was Jenna Carter, a safety engineer who had warned the company, repeatedly, that the system was dangerous. Evan stood at the edge of the stage, Lily beside him. He watched Lauren with something close to awe. The company buried the evidence. Suppressed internal warnings. Paid settlements with non-disclosure agreements. And the man responsible for that cover-up is standing on this stage right now. She turned to Oliver. His face had gone pale. Oliver Grant knew the drone was unsafe. He was warned by engineers. By safety specialists. By the woman who would later die because he ignored those warnings. And when the malfunction killed her, he made sure no one would ever know. That's a lie, Oliver said sharply, his voice cutting through the hall. This is a desperate attempt to play the video, Lauren signed. The screens shifted. Jenna's face appeared, exhausted but determined, recorded 3 days before her death. Evan, if you're watching this, something went wrong. The hall went completely silent. Jenna's voice filled the space, calm and methodical as she explained the thermal regulation flaw. She showed the test footage, the drone spiraling, smoking, crashing in flames. She named Oliver explicitly, recounting his refusal to delay the demonstration. When the video ended, the silence was absolute. Lauren turned back to the audience. Jenna Carter tried to save lives. She documented the truth because she knew people like Oliver would try to bury it. And they did. They destroyed evidence. Intimidated witnesses. Ruined the man she left behind when he tried to seek justice. She gestured to Evan. He stepped forward, standing beside her. Evan Carter lost his wife because this company valued profit over safety. He lost his career because he refused to stay silent. And when I hired him to help build technology that could give people like me, people like his daughter, a voice, Oliver tried to destroy him again. Oliver's mask finally shattered. This is slander. You have no proof. We have everything, Lauren signed. Every email. Every suppressed report. Every lie you told to protect yourself. Evan pulled a USB drive from his pocket and held it up. It's all here. And it's already been delivered to federal investigators. On cue, 2 figures in dark suits appeared at the side entrance. FBI agents, badges visible. They moved toward the stage with calm authority. Oliver's face went from pale to ashen. You can't, this is a private corporate matter. Oliver Grant, one of the agents said, reaching the stage, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, fraud, and negligent homicide. The hall erupted. Journalists surged forward, cameras flashing. Investors shouted questions. Board members sat frozen, faces slack with shock. The agents cuffed Oliver efficiently, reading his rights over the chaos. Oliver looked at Lauren with pure hatred. You just destroyed this company. Lauren's hands moved one final time. No. I saved it. The aftermath was a blur. Federal agents secured the evidence. Journalists mobbed Lauren and Evan outside the hall, shouting questions they didn't answer. Gerald Hutchins pulled Lauren aside, pale and shaken. The board will convene an emergency meeting, he said quietly. We'll need to discuss next steps. Reinstate me as CEO, Lauren said flatly. Or I go public with every board member who knew about the cover-up and did nothing. Gerald's mouth tightened. We'll convene tomorrow. 2 days later, Lauren was reinstated. The vote was unanimous, though she suspected it was less about confidence and more about self-preservation. Her first action as CEO was a company-wide ethics review. Her second was establishing the Jenna Carter Foundation for Technology Safety, with Evan as its director. Apex underwent a painful transformation over the following months. Executives resigned. New safety protocols were implemented. Regulatory bodies descended for audits. The company's stock took a hit, but Lauren didn't care. She was rebuilding it properly this time, even if it took years. Evan found himself in a strange new reality. He had an office. A salary. Respect from people who'd once dismissed him. The foundation focused on ethical robotics and accessibility technology, funding projects that prioritized people over profit. Lily thrived. The ASL translation system became publicly available, refined and improved with input from the deaf community. Schools began adopting it. Workplaces integrated it. People who'd been dismissed their entire lives suddenly had tools that made the world listen. 3 months after the shareholders' meeting, Evan walked into a coffee shop on a quiet Saturday morning. Not Seattle Brews. A different place. One with no history. He'd been looking at commercial real estate for weeks, planning something that felt impossible but necessary. He wanted to create a space where people like Lily, people like Lauren, felt welcomed instantly. A cafe with braille menus, captioned screens, staff trained in basic sign language. He stood in the empty storefront, imagining what it could become. The door chimed. Lauren walked in, carrying 2 paper cups. "Thought you might need coffee," she said, handing him one. "Thanks." They stood together in the empty space, sunlight streaming through dusty windows. "You're really doing this?" Lauren asked. "Yeah." Lily helped design the logo. Lauren smiled. She would. Evan took a sip of coffee. It was perfect, oat milk, no sugar. "I've been thinking," Lauren said carefully. "About what comes next. For me, I mean. You're CEO again. That's what comes next." "I know. But I don't want to be the kind of CEO my father was. Or the kind Oliver was." She looked at him. "I want to build something that actually matters. And I think I need people around me who won't let me forget why that's important." Evan met her eyes. "What are you asking?" "Stay involved. Not just with the foundation. With Apex. Help me make sure we don't slip back into who we were." He considered this. A year ago, he would have laughed at the idea of working with Apex Dynamics. But Lauren wasn't the company. She was someone trying to fix something broken, same as him. "Okay," he said. "But I'm keeping the cafe. Wouldn't expect otherwise." Lily burst through the door, breathless and grinning. She'd been exploring the neighborhood. She signed rapidly. "There's a park 2 blocks away. Can we put tables outside?" Evan smiled. "Maybe. And can we have a dog?" "Absolutely not." Lily pouted, then noticed Lauren. She ran over and hugged her without hesitation. Lauren hugged back, no longer surprised by the gesture. "You should come to the opening," Lily signed. "I will," Lauren signed back. "Wouldn't miss it." Evan watched them, something warm settling in his chest. For 3 years, he'd been surviving on anger and grief. But standing here, in this empty space that would soon be filled with light and voices and connection, he felt something different. Hope. Not the fragile kind that shatters at the first setback. The kind built on truth, on people who refuse to look away from hard things, on the belief that broken systems could be rebuilt if enough people cared. Lily tugged his sleeve. "What should we name it?" Evan thought for a moment, then signed a phrase that had carried him through the darkest years. "Courage listens." Lily's face lit up. She turned to Lauren. "Do you like it?" Lauren looked at Evan, then at Lily, then at the sunlight pouring through the windows. "I love it," she said aloud, her voice steady and sure. Outside, the city hummed with morning traffic. Inside, 3 people stood together in an empty room, imagining what they would build. The ending wasn't perfect. The damage couldn't be undone. Jenna was still gone. Oliver's arrest didn't erase the years of pain. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, that was enough. Spring arrived with gentle insistence. The cafe opened on a Saturday morning in late April, when the cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom and the air smelled like rain and new beginnings. Evan stood behind the counter, adjusting the espresso machine for the third time. Everything was ready, menus printed in braille and standard text, visual alerts for order numbers, tablets at each table displaying captions for ambient music. The staff he'd hired had all completed basic sign language training. 2 were fluent. 1 was deaf. Above the counter, painted in clean, simple letters, "Courage listens." Lily sat at a corner table, arranging flowers in small vases. She wore a dress she'd picked out herself, purple with stars, and couldn't stop smiling. The door chimed at exactly 9 a.m. Lauren walked in, but she wasn't alone. Behind her were news cameras. 3 of them. A reporter Evan recognized from the coverage of Oliver's arrest stepped forward, microphone ready. "Mr. Carter," she said warmly. "Mind if we film the opening? After everything that happened, people want to see what you've built." Evan's stomach tightened. He glanced at Lauren, who gave him an apologetic smile. "I might have mentioned it to a few people," she signed. Before he could respond, more people poured through the door. Not just customers, advocates from disability rights organizations, journalists, former Apex employees who'd reached out after the scandal broke, parents with deaf children who'd heard about the cafe's accessibility features. The space filled rapidly, buzzing with energy. Then, at the back of the crowd, Evan saw someone that made his breath catch. Carla Mendez, the engineer who'd sent the warning emails about the drone. The one Oliver had silenced. She approached slowly, eyes red. "I should have fought harder," she said. "I should have gone public when I had the chance. Jenna would still be." "You tried," Evan interrupted gently. "That's what matters." Carla pulled an envelope from her bag. "This is from 12 other engineers who worked on that project. We pooled funds. It's not much, but we wanted to contribute to the foundation. In Jenna's name." Evan's throat tightened. He accepted the envelope, unable to speak. Lauren stepped beside him, her hand briefly touching his shoulder, a quiet gesture of support. The reporter moved closer. "Mr. Carter, what do you want people to know about this place?" Evan looked around the cafe. At Lily, grinning as she showed a child her robot drawing. At Lauren, removing her hearing aids and signing with a regular customer. At the crowd of people who'd shown up not just for coffee, but for connection. "I want people to know that being heard isn't a privilege," he said. "It's a right. And when the world refuses to listen, you build your own space where voices matter." All of them. The camera lights felt too bright, but he didn't look away. Lauren stepped forward, signing as she spoke. "This cafe represents what Apex should have been from the start. A place built on transparency, accessibility, and the belief that people, not profit, come first." Evan didn't just survive what this company did to him. He built something better. Applause erupted. Lily ran to Evan and Lauren, wrapping her arms around both of them. Cameras flashed. The reporter smiled. "One more question," she said. "What's next for you?" Evan looked at Lauren, then at Lily, then at the cafe filled with people finally being heard. "We keep building," he said simply. "We keep fighting for the people who can't fight for themselves. And we never stop listening." The crowd cheered. Hours later, after the cameras left and the crowd thinned, Evan found Lauren sitting alone at a corner table, exhausted but smiling. "You ambushed me with a press event," he said, sitting across from her. "You needed the publicity. The cafe won't succeed on good intentions alone." He couldn't argue with that. Lily climbed into Lauren's lap, yawning. She signed sleepily, "Best day ever." "Yeah," Evan signed back. It really was. Lauren looked at him over Lily's head. "There are more stories like ours. People crushed by corporations. Whistleblowers silenced. Families torn apart by greed. I know. We can't save everyone. But maybe we can shine a light on a few of them." Evan thought about Jenna's video. About the power of one voice refusing to stay silent. "Maybe we can," he agreed. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon. The cafe sign glowed softly in the twilight. "Courage listens." And somewhere, a mother scrolling through her phone saw the news coverage and thought, "Maybe someone will finally listen to what happened to us." A teacher watched the clip and realized her deaf student deserved better resources. An engineer working for a company cutting corners paused, then started documenting everything. The ripples spread wider than Evan would ever know. If stories like this one, where the underdog fights back and truth wins, resonate with you, there are more waiting. Real people. Real battles. Real justice. Hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the moment when courage breaks through the silence. Because some stories need to be heard.